Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, I'm here today with another flip through of one of those artistic RPG modules. And today we're going to be taking a look at Super Blood Harvest. This was delivered to Kickstarters earlier this year, and I just haven't gotten around to making a video for it yet, but it is very cool. Even though the art is pretty crazy in here, the adventures in here, and there are 3 of them, and they kind of escalate in complexity as you go through the book, but they are a little more straightforward in how they are organized and laid out, and I think these I could actually run. Now these were created by Dirk with a Vengeance, and he was the artist on the one we took a look at last year called Silent Titans. And this is the Super Blood Harvest Omnibus Edition by Dirk with a Vengeance, the last record of the Vampire's Galactic Imperium. This is a role-playing game played with paper, pencils, dice, 2 to 5 friends, and your collective imagination. This book holds 3 self-contained adventures, first published as zines and gathered here for you to explore. The rules of play can be found at the back of the book. Basic familiarity with these rules is recommended before you proceed. For updates and inquiries, find me on Instagram. And we have the sections. We have the first module is Escape from the Bloodship. Then next up is Crashed on the Moon. And finally, Killbot Guardian Gods, and then the Dirk rules. So words, pictures, design, and layout by Dirk Leichty or Lechty. I'm still not quite sure how to say his last name, but one thing I can say for sure is this dude's art is just awesome. This really strong isometric feel is so cool. Of course, this whole thing kind of harkens back to being a kind of like an old school video game type design, and you'll see a couple of examples of why I think that soon. And the isometric maps really do a lot to convey that. We've talked about drawing before and how I used to draw a lot, and I like dungeons and all of that, but I never drew in that isometric style. It always seemed really difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. Maybe I should give it a try sometime. So we have this first one is the Super Blood Harvest Tabletop Adventure RPG by Dirk with a Vengeance. A little ASCII sword there. Contents, we have our intro, select your player, the Bloodship, encounters, and treasure. The Bloodship comes once per generation to swell its guts on our Vita. You've been abducted by a vampire space fortress. You wake in a shallow sea of blood, a fuel reservoir for your immortal captors. One thing I wish these guys like Dirk with a Vengeance, I wish they made solo game books. Because as much as I like these artistic RPG modules, it is kind of odd that, if I were to run this around a table, me being the GM, I would have this book set up in front of me, and I would kind of be the only one seeing the art and the design of the game. And really, the art and the design is like 90% of the game. And so I'm not quite sure what I would do so that my players could constantly be looking at everything as well. So they seem to be designed solely for the person running the game to look at and enjoy at an artistic level. And so in that sense, I feel like maybe they should be just designing solo game books, or maybe I wish they would make solo game books just so I could fully enjoy everything they have on offer. But here are the different players that the player characters that your players can choose from. It's a very simple system. We'll go over the rules in a bit. But here you have 6 different characters. You have a monster hunter, a shadow beaster, a spirit medium, a contortionist, a rogue, and a tech priest. And as you can see, very basic stats. You have HP, you have your hit points, you have your strength, your dexterity, and your will. Each of the characters has a special, like a skill, advantage on damage rolls versus non-human creatures. Weapons are always readied. Or the Shadow Beaster is he can spend 2 strength to conjure a Shadow Beast. Can be shaped like any natural animal. And then they also have some equipment that adds to their weapons or usually, and also their armor. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rules real quick. Like I said, super, super simple, rules light. The core mechanisms here are your stats, where you have your 3 ability scores. You have strength, dex, and will. Strength measures power, athleticism, toughness, and vigor. Dexterity measures speed, stealth, precision, and reflexes. And will measures charisma, knowledge, magic, and willpower. When a character's actions test their abilities, the referee calls for a saving throw. A save, you roll a d20, and if the result is equal to or below the relevant ability, you pass. Now what's interesting is you also have HP, you have your health points or hit points, and you also have AP, your armor points. Your armor points, pretty much those go first, then you can subtract from your HP, and then depending on the type of attack, you're going to be probably most likely subtracting points from your strength or possibly your dex and will. Anytime a hit goes through to your strength, you roll on this injury chart. And when you take strength damage past a save or a random body part becomes injured. If it's already injured, it becomes lost. If it's already lost, you die. And so you can choose to not take HP or AP damage, I believe, and have it go straight to your strength, but I don't think you would want to do that. And then some attacks will also damage dexterity and will. So you have your basic just stat checks. You have some basic non-combat actions that you can take. And then you also have your combat, your battle. It's very simple. You don't even really roll to attack. You just roll damage, and then the person or the thing, the enemy you are attacking, can react with different types of dodges if they want to. So it's a very, very quick, very light, rules light system that puts the focus just on the kind of like the story at hand. You don't need to think a lot about the rules in this game, which is really nice. You have a few extra rules. You have some rules about some equipment. There's no XP. There's no leveling up. You level up just by learning new skills from NPCs and from getting gear. So pretty cool. I like a rules light system, especially since right now we had just started playing DCC RPG, and that can get pretty crunchy. It's not too bad, but there are a lot of things going on in that game. I always forget that that game is a little more complex than something like 5e. But here's the basic layout of the ship. The player characters are gonna be starting up here. These yellow and pink areas, these rooms, they have oxygen that the characters can breathe. The other areas do not. One of the main ways that the player characters in this module and this adventure can get around is by these little like hamster tubes that are actually filled with blood, these little blood tubes. They can hold their breath and travel from node to node and come out at different areas. And they need to explore and figure out how to get off the ship. You have your various room numbers labeled. I have 1 through 12. And here you have your overview of the Bloodship. It hovers now in low orbit. Harvester tubes dangle in the atmosphere, slowly retracting as the ship readies for travel. In a day, it will accelerate towards the far side of the moon and hibernation. You have your events and encounters table there, and then you just go through your details of your room, and it's very simple. You have your 12 rooms, the 12 different things that the characters can find, and then here you have your enemies. 1 through, I think it's 10 different enemies that the player characters can encounter. You have your encounters: Shadow Elder, D3, Shadow Tendrils, Vampire Jailers are number 3. Priests of the Rock, number 4. Number 5 is your Blood Elder. He's kind of in some kind of like blood containment tube or something. Your D3 Blood Tendrils, Golden Spider, Mosquito Drone Swarms, Astral Elder, and a Man-Faced Eel. And then finally for this module here, you have this layout of all of the gear that you can find on the Bloodship. Stuff like gems, dream serum, vampire blood, laser flechette, a huge gem, house eater missile, memory crystals, red putty, anthropodermic tomes, blood fueled pet, an amber lens. Yeah, all kinds of cool stuff. And then you get this game over screen. So that's the first module. And then the second one here, we have our little splash page for Super Blood Harvest, module number 2. I like how you can tell that it was colored with pen. Contents, select your player. You have your exploration. This one is a little bit bigger, so you have like 3 or 4 different locations: a temple, a cloister, the Underkirk, and the Nineveh, which is a ship. Then you have your bestiary and your treasure tables here. Crashed on the moon. The Bloodlords built a temple for the thing they found below, but the god of the moon despised their worship and cast Vlad's children into darker space, deeper banishment. You wake on the steps of an abandoned lunar temple, surrounded by void and wreckage and no way home. So speaking of space vampires, I don't know if any of you have read the book Space Vampires by Colin Wilson. It was made into a pretty crazy 80s sci-fi film called Life Force with Matilda May. If you guys remember that movie, pretty cool movie. The book is pretty good. I used to have a copy, but I can't find it. The only Colin Wilson novel I have right now is Mind Parasites, and I need to read that. I just recently got a new nice copy of that. But here we have the different characters that we can pick for this second adventure. Again, man, God, how cool would this be if this was just like a really cool solo game book with all of this kind of stuff? You have your sentient power armor, ectosphere, a Dhampir, a Venusian exile, a space pirate, a psychic test subject. The Venusians, you got a little information about the Venusians there. This fits really nicely in with my sword and sorcery / sword and planet thing I'm working on right now. This adventure here really reminds me of that, and so does the next one. So the Bloodship is up here, Super Harvest 1. So I guess you could probably play this as a 3-adventure campaign. Although the last adventure in here is pretty big. That could be like a campaign setting in and of itself. But here you're starting. You have your temple laid out here. Then you can go to your cloister and you can take an elevator down to the Underkirk. So you have your various rooms here for the Lunar Waste. And here you have your Moon Temple and the start of your Lunar Waste with the temple steps, the empty ark, sealed reliquary, the chum vent, the red ice pools. And then here we have our cloister. Again, it looks like you have your blood tubes. So as you can see, this is like really pretty simply laid out for its strong artistic vision. This isn't like Silent Titans, which Silent Titans is completely, in my opinion, overwhelming to run as a referee, as a game master. I love looking at that book, but I think it would take quite a bit of work to actually run as a game. This I could easily see running as a game. It gives you just enough information to have some structure, but leaves enough up to your imagination to where you could, embellish the plot and the setting with your players at the table. So we have our cloister, our details of the cloister rooms. And then here we have our Underkirk, which is like kind of like an underground dungeon. This goes back up to the temple. This goes up to the cloister. Again, you got your hamster tubes going. And then the Underkirk here. doors, elevators, your various events. Humans and vampire screams rise from the great cavern and a whisper below the din. Discern the moon god's secret name with a will save. Lose 2 will if you fail. And then finally we have a ship. The Law Ship Nineveh. I'm not quite sure how to say that word. Inside the ship, events, and then your various rooms there. And here we have our encounter art for all the different kinds of creatures and enemies that the players can encounter. We have the Toothless Blood Priest, Fugitive Skull Mason, Feral Ghoul, Lunar Gem Borer, a Rocket Prince, and Ghost Monks. Oh, and then we have Robo Clones and God of the Moon. What does God of the Moon look like? B8. Ooh, God of the Moon, a giant hand coming out of some strange dimension there. All right, so that was module number 2. And then we also have our treasure. And we have some art of the treasure there. Minor artifacts, armor modules, hover tomes, beam Bibles, Omniflame heresies, Book of Masks, and this actually has some additional rules for casting spells. And there is our game over page. This is the one that I really like here, this Super Blood Harvest 3. For some reason, this, I think it's the colors, reminds me of the King Crimson album, Lark's Tongue and Aspic. Just the, yeah, it's got to be the color scheme here. It kind of looks like a Renaissance or medieval type color scheme or something. So we have our contents here. New game, select your player, structure of play, map of the red planet, exploration, the Habsphere anarchies, the gods' dominions, creatures, and paraphernalia. So this is the most complex of the 3. And like I said, this feels like it could be an entire campaign setting. After the fall of the Vampire Imperium, all Mars joined the race to rebuild ever deadlier drones, and for safety slowly surrendered all freedom to their killbot guardians. Now machine gods ravage the red planet with war, and no safe place remains beyond their stifling shelter. You are among the last free peoples of Mars, hidden by jungle from the gods' autonomous swarms. So in this one, the player characters find themselves on Mars, living in these habitats, trying to protect themselves from like the poisonous wastes out there. And in this game, you are going to roll on a chart to find out what the players are trying to do. So you share some aim beyond survival that beckons you out from the safety of your shelter. What drives you to brave the awful wilds? So you can have loyalty to a beloved leader or protege gone missing, a faith in lost Earth, and dreams of return. Again, very much a Sword and Planet style adventure here. Vengeful hatred for the gods or vampires, compassion for the imprisoned flocks and the cause of liberation, vision for a new nation on Mars, boundless, reckless greed. Or you can come up with your own reason, but I do like the way that this has this setup, and you can roll on some tables to set up the initial kind of layout of the game. You live in the Habsphere anarchies, free human colonies hidden in the last Martian jungles. And here you have your overall map here of the campaign setting. This is where the players are going to start, and this green area is like the only really safe habitat. All of this is poisonous and deadly to the player characters. So one of the things about this particular setting is survival. You have toxic wastes, green, wild, and void plateau. Toxic wastes, poison atmosphere, D6 damage per turn of exposure, ruined town, weathered farms, and wildlands. Everywhere encroaching sand. And you have these lakes. There are twin lakes, ant queens, towers, workers, winged drones. You have different kinds of storms and weather. And as you roll on the encounter table, eventually one of these threats is going to trigger, and the threat is going to escalate as the game goes on, as the campaign or adventure goes on. And so one of the things the player characters need to do is they need to take care of these threats, manage these threats as they occur. So you have a different weather table, different discoveries and encounters, different kinds of events. So if you roll a 1 on the event, I think it's on a d20, if you roll a 1, you either have a new threat comes out, or the existing threat advances up the chart until it finally, pretty much, if it gets to the last level, it's kind of game over. Then you have your pre-made characters here, your Sword Princess, your Auto-Mind Replicant, Dragon Mage, and alchemical, you have alchemical formulas here. A Bot Priest, an Escaped Clone, or a Feather Blight Exile. Very cool. I just love the overall look of this particular module here, number 3. And here you have your Hab spheres, where the player characters are going to be living, their home base. Your Mountain Dragon, your Sea Dragon, which are dungeons in and of themselves. Your Ark of the Imperium. The Self-Replicating Spires, the Grandmother Spire. That's pretty cool. Man, that's awesome. Auto Tower Confederacy. So that's the Feather Blight Skyship, House of Luddites, the Sleeping Gate, discoveries. So these are different things that you can discover out in the wilderness as the player characters are exploring. It's a tile crawl, basic tile crawl. You have your creatures, automated, the Auto-Mind Swarm. I love that drawing there. It's really cool. Auto-Mind Shepherd, the Auto-Mind Chimera, the Herd Mind Headhunter, Homunculus Hive, Self-Assembling Dragon. You have your Feather Blight creatures, Contagions and Mutations, Queen Starling, the Queen Starling's Court, the Citizens of Mars. Yeah, so this one definitely has the most background, probably the most to do, but I still don't think it's overwhelming. I don't feel, when I was reading through this, I never hit a point where it's like, oh my God, there's so much, if you were running this game, to remember, to keep in mind. It seems like a really nice balance of artistic presentation and useful information. And here we have our treasure and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's it. That is a look at Hive Minds from Dirk with a Vengeance. I believe you can still order this. I will put a link to the webpage in the description. So, all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at Super Blood Harvest, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.